Welcome to Mission Minded, the podcast where we explore outside the box thinking in carrying out Christ's Great Commission. On this week's episode of the podcast, we are joined by Brian Reed. Brian has served with ITEC for the past 11 years in video and film production and as an instructor for ITEC's film training module. On this episode, we discuss how he became involved with film and his journey to using it as a full-time ministry by not only creating content, but training others to do the same. Now here's your host, Jim and Kristen.
All right, well, we are back in the studio today with a new face, right? I think this is a first for us.
Second.
A second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
but not as the main guest.
Brian's been in every one of the podcasts.
This is very true.
Just
Brian
on the other side of the camera.
Exactly, on the other side. Well, it's good to have you here in the seat again, Brian.
Good to be here. You know, it's not the normal seat I'm in during the podcast, but hey, I'm glad to be here.
Well, great. Well, Brian, we're here to talk about film training today at ITEC, and that is in your wheelhouse. But before we jump into all of that, let's get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got connected here at ITEC?
Yeah, so growing up, my brothers and I always had a video camera around. My dad was always on the cutting edge of technology, although he had no clue how to use it. So my brothers and I would always take whatever video camera we had, and we would go and make little films. We made the first Ghostbusters 2, so we made the original Ghostbusters 2. But yeah, we were always making home movies. When I got in high school, I would, film some of the dramas there and for the high school. And then as I got older and technology became more available by editing on computers and cameras became a little bit better, I started, filming weddings and then my friends and I started making short films and that led to me doing films at the church. And at the time, in 2011, I think it was, I got a call from Dave Nichols, who's one of the elders at our church in Birmingham. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and my home church there was going to do a training along with ITEC in Ecuador. And so Dave knew that I was making videos for different missionaries and invited me to go down to with them to Ecuador and just to document the training. And so that's how I became familiar with ITEC.
Well, seems like God's been preparing you from the very beginning with your interests and how He set you up to.
Growing up, my parents, we always had were always taking us to the movies, and so that passion for film came from a lot of people like my age, from seeing Star Wars for the first time, and so growing up, he's like, well, I'm going to be the next, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. But God had other plans for me to use those talents that He's given me. So.
That's awesome, Jim. I understand you like to dabble a little bit in filmmaking.
It's fun, and it's been fun being around Brian, somebody who's very gifted in film, can glean little tips or tricks from him along the way. But I'm not the only one that's gleaned tips or tricks along the way. So you've been able to work in investing people around the world, but I guess we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's fun watching Brian work on films, and not only short films but full-length feature films as well.
I have done just about everything.
Yeah.
Short films, weddings, bar mitzvahs.
Yeah.
Just about everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool stuff. So yeah, we've done a couple of projects. We even did the film festival together, the 72-hour turnaround. Yep. And you did a few of those as well. So those are a fun adventure.
Yeah. When I first got into filmmaking seriously, I entered a few different, like these 48-hour film competitions. And what that is you go into this competition with your team not having any idea of the film that you're going to make. And so when you go to the kickoff, they give you all the different elements that you need to make your film. And that's genre, that might be characters, that might be a line of dialogue that you may need to use. And so you have 48 hours to come up with a script and to film it and to complete it. And so that was a great learning experience for me. And being able to think outside the box when it comes to, creating videos.
Quickly.
Yeah. And so I remember my first one. So I was involved in the Sidewalk Film Festival in Birmingham, and they had a competition called the 48-hour sidewalk scramble.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first one, I went in, and my older brother and a few good friends of mine, and all of us had a background in either writing or video production. And man, we thought we were good. And so we went in, and it was just a nightmare from the beginning for us. Just sound issues and just not having a good story. But we thought we had a good product until we went into the screening, and we showed our film, and we're like, man, we're good. And then we saw the other films, and we're like, oh man, we don't know what we're doing. And so that's when I was like, I got to learn everything about the camera that I'm using, everything about cinematography and editing, because if I want to make it in this field, I need to know what I'm doing. And so, being able to learn that was really important. But I feel good because the guy who won that festival that really, showed us up in that, guy named Adam Wingard, and you may not have heard of him. He just directed Godzilla versus King Kong.
Oh wow!
It just came out in the theaters. Yeah. So stiff competition.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about film, especially timelines like that, is you don't have time for a reshoot. And
No.
so was that the one where you shot all the audio, but it was raining?
Yeah, and and we were just so worried about what it looked like,
Right.
that we didn't worry about sound. I don't think our sound guy was wearing headphones, and we weren't worried about it. But sound is just as important as picture. We come to learn. So, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit about what we teach our students now.
Right. Yeah. So beautiful shot, but there was rain
Awful
on a
audio.
metal rooftop.
Yeah. So they had this great dialogue that we had written, and you just couldn't hear it.
Right.
And so we had to make it like a silent film. And I won't say the name of it because it is on YouTube
You don't
somewhere.
want people looking it up? Okay.
Yeah, I don't want
All
them
right.
looking it up. And yeah.
Yeah. So lessons learned along the way.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Brian, you have clearly a very extensive background in your filmmaking and the different types that you've done. So, but why film training? Why is film training so important?
So when I came to ITEC, my job was to document the trainings, right? So we were doing medical and dental and optometry at the time, and mechanical. And I didn't think that film training was anything that we would be doing. It was never on my radar until I went to Ecuador. I think it was the second time I went to a training. There was this young guy that saw me filming, and he had a lot of questions about my camera and what I was doing and how I was doing it. And then he said, I have some videos I made. Could you show me? And so he came back with this huge iMac under his arm. It's like, where'd you get that?
Like a full desktop.
A full desktop. Yeah, came, put it down, and he showed me these little films he'd made. And I was like, man, these are pretty good. But he wanted some pointers about, more how to get his camera work better, some more, tips and tricks on editing. And then he brought friends in that had the same questions. And so I went to Galo, who's the director of ITEC Ecuador. And I said, Galo, I know we're doing these other trainings, is film training, like something that, you see that would be profitable for the people in your community? He's like, absolutely. And so we went down and did our first training in 2014 in Ecuador. And so basically the why is that we want to give them another tool for their toolbox to share the gospel. And we do it through medical and dental, but we can also do it through film and story. And so just like we have access to social media and YouTube and Vimeo and all these different places, they have the same access as we do. And so we want to help them get on an even playing field through media and using video to tell stories. But not just any stories. We want them to tell, stories of redemption, stories of people's, how they came to know Christ. Because you can invite somebody to a church, but they may never enter the doors. But if you share a video on social media, more than likely, if they know you, they'll watch the video. And so we want them to use that as a door opener.
That's so cool. And what's that statistic we saw recently? Over 80% of the world's population owns a mobile device, and that's what you're using to capture these films, right, in the training. Yeah,
so our training has evolved over time. So our first training in Ecuador, we went and we took down the equipment that we had. So we had some nice DSLRs, we had film we had light kits. We brought all our tripods, just anything, sliders, anything we brought. And we learned quickly that we don't need to do that. So we let one of the teams who were shooting their films from the class borrow our DSLR, and it was baptized there in the the river there in Shell. So we learned we need to put them on an even playing field of the same device. And so we started off with iPad minis because they had decent cameras, and then you can edit on them. Mm-hmm. But now most everyone has their own smartphone. So with a smartphone, again, you can film and you can edit with it, and they already have it. They already have access to it. And so, so that's what we want to do. We want to teach them how to use the phones in their pockets as a media and storytelling tool.
Right. I mean, anybody could push record, on their phone, but there's an art to telling a story. And so not only telling the story, but how to make the most of the camera they have in their hand. Right.
Yeah. Like you said, most of us are taking pictures every day. Just about every day I'm taking a picture or a video. I don't use it like most people. It's just something just to capture that moment in time.
Right.
But we want to teach them how to take that, and by teaching them cinematography and by teaching them editing, we want to teach them how to be able to tell a complete story that someone can watch and gain something from it, not just a snapshot, but an entire story.
Brian, tell us a little bit about what this looks like. What does a typical training week look like for you? I know you're training both overseas and now virtually through Zoom. So describe a training to us.
Yeah, so a training would consist of if we go overseas and train, right? So we're going to go and we're going to we have like 5 different modules that we go through on this. So the first one, we're going to teach them just kind of an overview of why we tell stories through film and what that's about. And we go over like scheduling of like pre-production, post-production, what those look like, what those are. We go over, image size, what's a pixel. And then after that class, we get them and we go through cinematography. And we're teaching them all the basics of cinematography, rule of thirds, framing up your shot, medium shots, over the shoulder, what pan, zoom, all that. And then we assign the students to go and to film each other and to make, basically, we're going to make a 1-minute film about why they're taking film class and what they want to achieve from this. And so that's kind of the first part of it. Then they take that footage that they filmed and we go into edit. But before that, we film a project with them as well, so they kind of see what it's like when I set up an interview, what it's like when I film B-roll for that, and then we take all that footage and then we all edit the footage together. And so then we go over editing, the basics of editing and the tempo of editing. Then we go over story. What's a good story? What makes our ears perk up when we're looking for something to tell? And so we go over story. And then we give them their large class assignment, which is for them to go out, find a story, find someone's story to tell, and they tell about a 5 to 6 minute story through video. And then they turn it in and we critique it. We go over some things they could change to make it better. We go over the sound, how to get better sound, and then we go over distribution. Now that you've made this movie, what do you do with it, right? So we teach them use of social media. We teach them how to, if they want to play it in their church, do projectors if they have access to that. But the good thing is about our training for film is that not only when we do it overseas, right, we can do it virtually now. And it's basically the exact same training. All the instruction they get is the same. The only thing different is we're not in person and being able to give them that personal one-on-one time like we do. But we've done a few virtual trainings here. We just finished one up, and it went really well. The students are making just great films. They're really involved, and it's really something to see these students go from just basic knowledge of taking a picture, right, from first, and then taking that and then creating a video by the end of the training is just remarkable.
Yeah, I think one thing to point out is that our goal isn't to go and do a ton of trainings around the world as far as ITEC goes. And so if somebody's listening and think, man, that's great, we should get ITEC to go on our next trip, I think it's important to note that we're trying to create a template that somebody could implement in their context. So as mentioned, I like to dabble with film, and I in no way have created full-length films and up to the level that Brian is, but I've made quite a few home movies and like to practice a lot. And so I would say I'm an extreme hobbyist. I like it and it's fun. And so I've actually gone and done a film training, and I felt very capable and able to take that curriculum and invest in somebody where, they didn't have that background. And by the end of the week, they were all creating short films as well. So it's exciting to see that. I think for me, the ongoing fruit is such a worthwhile investment to just see that the work can continue long after we're home and tell stories that are unique to their culture, their context, and in their language that we would never be able to tell.
Yeah, we try and keep the training as simple as possible. And my goal as a film trainer is to work myself out of a job in a lot of these areas.
Right.
So, like, example, from our first training in Ecuador, we have a trainer that came out of that, Henry. And he's done quite a few trainings where he's been able to go places where he can speak the language in Spanish that I don't speak. And he can do the training a lot better than I can in that situation. We've had trainers from different parts of Africa where we've gone and trained, and there's some guys that wanted to pick up the baton and go forward and continue the training. And so we've had people who've gone out of that and they do their own training. So it's not just through ITEC. They're going and doing their own trainings. And that's what we want to see. And like the same what Jim was saying, from churches, if you have someone in your media team who's involved in video production, film production, we want them to go and do the training. Now, they don't have to go with us and do it. They can go and do their own because they have their own partners. But if they need help with, because not everyone's going to sit down and write this curriculum that they need to take to help them train. We're here to help them with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Give them the tools, give them the outline.
Tools,
yeah. So.
And that's the goal, to see this reproduced, to have that sustainable impact on a short-term trip.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about that a lot here at ITEC recently. And what a cool way to do that, to tell a story. I mean, that's how Jesus himself explained the kingdom of God in the Gospels to us. It's through parables, through storytelling. This is such an organic, natural way to reach the world with the gospel. Brian, can you share an experience that you've had on the field, an experience in your trainings that really made an impact on you?
Well, I've had quite a few, especially from the students when they come back with their films and their stories, and they're so moving, told in the context of their culture. But one story that stands out to me is just the hunger for one of these students that just wanted to take the training. So in Paraguay, we did a training in Paraguay a few years ago, and all the students were indigenous to that country, to Paraguay. And there was a father and a son that came from a church. The father was the pastor of the church, and the son really wanted to take the training. And so they were out real remote. To get to the training, they had to take a boat down this river to get to the training. They said 2 days to get there. But they had to pay for, the equipment that they were going to use. And so that church made candles, and they sold them in their village to be able to pay for their expenses to get to the training. And so then they came to the training and got those skills, and just knowing that they're able to take back this way of communicating the gospel to their community, to make a video where someone looks like them, speaks the same language that they do, telling a story that's similar to a background something that they might have gone through, is just remarkable. And it's stories like that stand out to me. That those guys and gals that really want to learn and to really want to add something to their toolbox to share the gospel.
Yeah, that's great. And, I think the desire to learn, is something that is, not not unique to one country. And globally, there's a desire to learn. And I think a lot of people feel, well, I can never do that because I don't have the tools. And like you mentioned, the smartphones are becoming more and more readily available. And I know you've talked about this a lot, but there are full-length feature films now that are being solely recorded just on a smartphone. So what level would a smartphone be, as far as being able to produce a short film?
Yeah, you have everything there in your pocket to produce a short film. I just came back from a film festival where I saw this great documentary that was shot completely on an iPhone, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And they told a complete story, and that's what we want our students to do, to teach them how to use it. I mean, we're already, most people are already using their phone to go live on Facebook or to share a video from something their kids did, or what they ate for dinner. But we're just teaching them how to take those different pieces that they filmed and to put them together and how to tell a story. And we're teaching them, how to conduct an interview, and how to take that and how to use those sound bites and to splice those together to make a coherent story that someone, when they watch it, they're going to get more out of it than it just being, a 30-minute, live video where someone's just sitting there just talking.
Right. Yeah, it's so cool. So somebody's out there thinking, man, that's great. How do I get involved? Do they, reach out? And just throwing this out there for clarification. So,
yeah, first, if you're interested in a training from ITEC, from us, and partnering with us, you can go to itecusa.org, and there's a form there somewhere on the website. You guys could probably tell them a little bit more.
We'll make sure that's on the film page for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go there, fill out the request form, and go through one of our trainings. And you can be, on site or virtually, and that's, stateside and internationally. So, and, we want to, if you already have the skills of filmmaking, but don't have the curriculum to do it, we want to help you with that as well. We want to help you be more successful in your training trip that you may want to pursue. So we're open to, helping you get on the same page that we are of the training and using that curriculum.
So if you're out there listening and this has piqued your interest, it sounds like something that you want to know more about, we will put all the links to how to reach us, contact us. There's a video about why film training. We'll add all of that to our show notes. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today and for talking to us about film training. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just have one thought. Somebody that's out there and just thinking, man, how do I get started? I would just challenge them to just start maybe through their local church. Ask, hey, are there any things that you need filmed or created? And then always finish the film. And you'll learn in the process. If it didn't turn out how you would hope, just get it done. And along the way, you'll learn so much.
Yeah. We get questions from people. It's like, so how do I get started in making videos for missions, right? So if you're in your church, just volunteer to make videos for your church. They need it, right? Go on a trip that your church is going on, and that's how I got started. And it was my first trip was in 2002, and it was to Belize, and the trip was they were building some buildings, and they were doing a VBS. And at the time, I'm not good at construction. I didn't want to lose a finger, right? And at the time I didn't have kids, so I didn't know how to work with kids and didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so I was like, can I just take my video camera and just kind of document what's going on? And that's what sparked this whole journey for me was being able to tell those missionary stories there in Belize and how God used that to help them gain some funds and to tell people about what's going on there. So just go out, like Jim said, just go out and make movies. You're not going to hurt anybody, right? You're going to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. I still learn from my mistakes that I make, through video. If you don't know something, Google it.
Right.
There's plenty of 12-year-olds on YouTube that will teach you how to do it. I still get that from YouTube as well. If there's something I don't know how to do in the editing software, I'll look it up, and it's usually someone my son's age,
And also, just to brag on Brian, if you're wanting to see some of his handiwork, I would recommend going to the Next Chapter series, which Brian has filmed all of those. Steve's after his injury, following really 2 years, and then going down to Ecuador. So the journey in that. And then also there's a short film called Trapped that was actually created in partnership with a local women's pregnancy center here in our area. But what is crazy about that, it's been now viewed in every country around the world that we have stats for, except North Korea.
Yeah,
so that's not on there.
Everywhere we have stats for it is played. It's in English, it's in Spanish, it's in Chinese, it's in Russian, and so it's been viewed over 11 million times. It's crazy,
and it just goes to show you the power of a story and how it can reach or impact the world. So.
Yeah, and our students that we train can make that same impact as well.
Right.
They have the same access that we do, and so a story that they tell could go viral around the world as well. So.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. We'll get those videos linked down in the show notes as well, so you can check those out. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Mission Minded Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Mission Minded. For more information on today's topic and show notes, please visit our website, itecusa.org. Mission Minded Podcast is produced by ITEC. The goal of this podcast is to inspire conversations about Great Commission participation. The views, organizations, and individuals represented, interviewed, and discussed on the podcast do not necessarily represent an official position or formal partnerships with ITEC.